All right, guys, it's time for the Montreal Canadiens 2025-26 season preview. After a very, very good season last season, well, end of the season anyway, it started a bit rocky. They made the playoffs for the first time since they made the Stanley Cup Final in 2020-2021 season, the COVID bubble season. And yeah, I mean, after that season started, it was rough as, and they brought it home like an absolute freight train, made the playoffs, you know, won over all their fans' hearts, and tried their heart out in the first round, but ultimately got bounced. But nothing but positive signs from that season if you're a Montreal fan. And honestly, it's got to have you absolutely raring to go for this upcoming season. And yeah, so let's take you through the projected lineups. I think we're using cap wages to do that, and Jaden will run you through those.
Alrighty. First line we got Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Bolduc, Zdak, and Demidov, Line, Newhook, and Kapanen, Gallagher, Evans, Anderson. Defense, Gooley, Dobson, the new big addition, Hudson, Struble, Matheson, and Carrier. And then we got on goaltending Montabu and Dobes. Um, just in regards to ins and outs, they get Zach Bolduc getting rid of Malou. Um, Primer goes to the Carolina for a seventh, if you want to note that. And Noah Dobson, obviously the big one, coming in for two firsts and Heineman. And in regards to free agent signings, not too much, but they bring in Karkinen and Veleno. And if you want to note as well, Blaze. So a lot of moving around in the depth besides Dobson, the big name addition, and nothing really in regards to staff moves. Ultimately, this team looks scary good. I'd be really scared if Carey Price was the goaltender that we knew and he was playing. And I think that's the biggest weakness of this team is probably the goaltending.
Hmm.
Um, but this team looks good. And I guess my first question, handing off to you, do they make the playoffs with this team now that they've shored up some of the defense?
I mean, it would be an absolute failure of a season if they don't. Um, Especially after how they came home last season. I know, you know, the the East was weak last season. They only made the playoffs or with 91 points on the season. So it's not like they had a phenomenal 100-point season or anything else. They scraped in. I think they beat Columbus by 2 points, who finished on 89. Like that's how weak the East was last season, especially in terms of points. I guess you could put it down to they don't have as many feeder teams in the East as they do in the West, but um, so you could say with a couple of bounce back seasons from some teams that had down seasons, you might see Montreal slip out, but I just don't think that'd be the case. This team is it's gained the experience it needs. It's getting to that age now of all of its core players where they're not young 20s anymore. They're mid 20s. Caulfield's 24, Suzuki 26, Line's 27, Kirby Dack 24, Newhook 24. Like they're getting to that age now where they've got the experience to go out and play a full 82 game season without those ebbs and flows. And with the inclusion of Noah Dobson to that team is absolutely phenomenal. You're right. The I think if Carey Price was their goaltender, and we're talking prime Carey Price was their goaltender, I'd almost have him as a lock for probably a top three. I do think with the current tandem they've got, that is probably the area that they lack the most. Outside maybe a true second line center, depending on whether or not Kirby Dack can step up into that role. Um, but yeah, like you look at Motumbo, he played 62 games last season, which is a lot to put on a goaltender. A 902 save percentage, not terrible considering his overall workload. But you got to ask the question: can he back that up and play 60 odd games again this season? Because he's probably going to have to.
Yeah,
Um,
he has to.
Dobes Dobes did well in the games that he did back up for them last season. In saying that, he only played 16 games, so the question mark comes with, can he play 25? Can he alleviate some of that pressure on Motumbo and, make sure that Motumbo doesn't get overworked, doesn't need to be playing 60 odd games? Um, this tandem could work. I do think both of those goaltenders are serviceable. Dobes is probably that goaltender that may end up, you know, taking the starting position once he's got a little bit more experience. He did show some pretty good, glimpses at times, but yeah, you'd have to have a big question mark on that because I do feel like if that fails or if one of them gets injured long term, all of a sudden they're very, very
Yeah,
thin in
like
that
they
area.
do
And
have Karkinen, Capo Karkinen, um,
mhm,
but like, yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah,
you have that, like that is an asset that worst case scenario can come through. Um, but yeah, that kind of shows where they are lacking. They've tried to address it with plenty of goaltenders at this point, and it's not still needs addressing. Look, they've got pretty much all their draft picks, so things could be moved if they need to add any more. They're not negative 4.8 mil. It's because Carey Price is not being put on LTIR yet, so they've got say 6 million or something like that in cap space
mhm,
to play with, and I think they probably could try and work in a goaltender because both their goaltenders, well, all their goaltenders, do not have term really. They got one extra year, so
mhm.
I think they can work on the cap management there. Look, it's a really good team in regards to wingers. My issue with this team ultimately though is size. They're very small. It's
Mhm.
high skill, speed, but when you go to playoffs, you kind of want size, and that is my issue with the team. They've addressed it with moving some of their depth around. Obviously, uh, some ins and outs in regards to depth to address some of the key roles that they need to be played, and I think that's smart. I think they've done a lot of right things. Love the Noah Dobson ad. They traded away two firsts and a player for it, and it's exactly what they need to do. I would
Mhm.
like to see a first or whatever, first and a third, something like that, go for a second line center. Um, and however you finance that, I'll leave that's to them. But that's what I would be looking for. Um, and then somehow a cheap goaltender that is doing all right, that can get you 900. That's what I'm looking for a backup goaltender is someone who can get me 900. Dobes can do that, but do you want to rely on it? You know, I guess that's what they're going to have to do for now. Ultimately,
I
they're in a hard division, but I'll let you speak. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna put this to you with the second line center, rather than giving away drafts, which I mean they've got plenty of. They've got their next three first round picks,
They got all
which
their
is
picks.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they gave up two first round picks for Dobson, and somehow they've got their, like, that's how stacked they were with picks. But so it wouldn't hurt them to give those picks up. But if they were to keep them, is it a potential, like, to move on someone like a Patrick Laine to perhaps actually go and get a out and out center, second line center, and move. You might have to eat some of his contract, but it's only for this season. Maybe go out and get a true second line center so that you can move Kirby Dack to a wing, so that he doesn't have to try and play that center role. He can just go to a wing. He played mostly on the wing last season. Um, I know they'd love for him to just fit into that role and fill that second line center void. But do you maybe try and turn one of your, I say assets. Laine's been a bit of a pain in the butt for any team he's been a part of, but he's still a phenomenal goal scorer and he's got the capabilities to absolutely light it up. So I'm sure you could convince someone out there that needs goal scoring to take him on for a second line center if you're wearing some of the cap space.
Yeah.
I'm
Look,
sure
they got to
somewhere.
wear some of the cap space. I would, just because currently projected third line, you don't want to spending, maybe play second line. You don't want to spending your highest paid player not playing on the first line. It just doesn't really work, and he's not greatly a role player either. So that is the issue. He's only really scored 20 goals last 4 seasons. 6 goals in 18 games is pretty damn good, but it's a small sample size. And yeah, look, he's a negative plus minus. I'm just saying for the last 5 seasons. Yeah, it's someone I would move. Obviously, you're not getting the greatest thing for it, but you move him, you use your picks, bring in a second line center, and then you bring in probably your top 9 forward to replace him as well.
Mm,
Moving a second round or something. If you're not moving players, and I think that shores up your forward line. Your forward line's done. You can obviously you kind of want a strong second line center too. They need a little bit of size. They don't have issues with the face-offs. They got some good face-off takers, so that's not the overly critical thing to look at either. But once you shore that up, I like the D. You could probably, there's Jakai and Hudson for depth and Struble, but they're a bit young. You might want to add a depth D, but
mm.
yeah, I would
I
have to. I'd have to address the second line center first.
I put this one to you because I was trying to think of second line centers that might be available. Now, you wouldn't be giving up Patrick Laine for him, but I mean, he's gonna be gettable because he's gonna be available at the deadline, and his pedigree's unreal.
Yeah,
Evgeny Malkin,
yeah, yeah.
like he's gonna be available. He is a center. He's a second line center, and he is gonna be available. Like unless Crosby comes out and does the most Crosby-esque thing and
The
has
the
Pittsburgh in a
problem with
playoff spot.
the problem with that though is you're waiting to deadline to get it or
Well,
thereabouts. Like I don't know if
I don't know if
I
you
don't know if
have to.
Pittsburgh pulls the trigger early on that.
I
Um,
think if the trade's there,
but
because
yeah,
they have assets, man. They have assets that the Penguins are gonna want,
look at it.
like to
It
give up.
dresses it for this year, but it's not long term.
No,
Uh,
it doesn't. But
but
it gives them a
I don't mind it. I think
big
it
playoff
it
piece.
gives this team the best chance possible
Hmm.
in the playoffs, hoping to make the playoffs. Then in the playoffs.
Yep.
But
And he
also
hasn't
he
said that he's gonna retire either.
well true.
Malkin hasn't come out and said that he's done.
Mm.
So it comes with the potential that he might play on past this year. I know he's 39. Retirement's probably the best thing, but the guy's still
Yeah.
got it. He's physical. He addresses that physical presence that you spoke about. He still put up 50 points in 68 games
Yeah,
last season.
my
He
issue is
can
the
score
injuries. He's not going
goals.
to provide you 82 games. Um, I'm probably expecting 50 games from him with his old age and his injury-prone career. What do you give up for that? Like, what is that worth?
Mm,
If it was just like I'm just, it's not what it's worth. But if it was just like a third round pick, I'm like, oh yeah, bring him here. Like,
yeah, yeah,
I take that risk
yeah.
every day of the week. Like,
But if it's two first round picks, you're sort of going, maybe not.
yeah, exactly. So
But I don't think he'll be two first round picks. I
nah,
think, like someone's gonna pick him up, someone's gonna take him. So I don't think it'll be a third round pick, but it might be a 2 seconds or something like that, which I think Montreal has.
mm,
Plenty of second round picks. They've got the assets for him. He popped into my head. I thought physicality,
yeah. The other
second
one,
line
because
center.
we just covered it, was like Nazem Kadri. I don't know
From Calgary.
how available he is from Calgary, but he's
Mm,
kind of like that nice, strong and kind of bona fide second line center. He had 35 goals last year. Obviously, you're kind of paying for that though. It
mm,
is. Canada. So, whether they do
Yeah,
that either, but
and then Calgary need to go and find not only a first line center but also a second line center.
yes. So, but those are the type of players that make sense.
Yeah, 100%.
But I do like the Malkin pick. It does
Hmm.
fix. I think it fixes the forward line completely.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, my only issue would be this the real depth on regards to the D, but even then it's really really good, and yeah, just goaltending.
Mm.
And I'm not even sure who you can go out and poach because it's goaltending is kind of hard to get these days.
And the hardest part is that goaltending tandem might actually be so good this year.
Yeah.
Doves may take another step and be, or Dobesh, I think it is. My bad on the pronunciation. Um, but he might take another step and be unreal, play 30 games and be fantastic, or he might even take the starter off of Montebo.
Mm.
But if Montebo plays at 902, 905 again and can at least, be above 900, I know it's not the greatest, but if you can still just get serviceable goaltending out of these guys, I think they've got the offensive power to put enough goals on the board, and the defense is strong enough to sort of help them out at times as well. So, yeah, it's not going to take much for this team to go far this season. Um, but they are going to need their goaltending tandem to not all of a sudden go backwards and completely shit the bed.
Yeah. Yeah. That. Yeah. It is. It's a risk reward. I think you're expecting them to do better because you went out and got Dobson. So you're expecting your decor to be better in front of your goaltender. So you're hoping for a 908 or more. Obviously, you want more,
Hmm.
but you're probably looking for a 908 save percentage from your first line goaltender, whoever it is. And I think that helps this team greatly. They've got the the goal scoring. Goal scoring, I don't
Hmm.
think is going to be the problem. It's going to be keeping you out of the
No.
net, and it's going to be physical enough against the teams that like to play physical. I think that's where they might get beat because they are a skinnier, smaller side compared to some others, and I
Hmm.
think that can be a thing. But look, some of
And
these players have been successful and done playoff runs, so I can't see why it's not possible.
and the one player we just have not touched on, I mean, it's a couple of players to be fair. This whole team is stacked with some stupid talent. I mean, Lane Hudson, can he take it to another level? That's going to be a big part this season. He was phenomenal. Um, but also Ivan Demidov, we've seen basically nothing of him, and he looks like an unreal talent. Adding him to this team could do God knows what in excelling this team forward, especially with that forward line. You just look at those four lines at the moment that you see, and it's hard to see them not scoring 4 goals a game,
Yeah,
especially with this
yeah,
talent.
yeah.
So,
I don't think scoring is going to be the issue. It's really that the center depth in regards to the second line center, and that's really it because I can see this goaltending actually pulling it off. Ultimately, do they make the playoffs? Who do they replace? Are they replacing the Leafs? Are they replacing Tampa? Um, that is probably my last question to you. Who do they replace?
I
Because you
don't
got you, you
like
you got Ottawa there as well. That's trying to replace as well. So
yeah, see, I mean, at the moment, I probably have Florida, Ottawa, Tampa as your top three. Um, I I think there's going to be two teams from the Atlantic in the wild card. It is probably a valid thing to think that there's a potential Montreal might miss out, as good as this team looks, because of how stacked the Atlantic is. Like if Detroit finally make that next step, they're going to be trouble. They're going to be competing for a wild card spot. Toronto, although yes, they've lost Mana, I don't think that's going to be big enough to send them all the way out of the playoffs. I think they'll still be competing for that top three wild card at worst. Um, and then obviously you throw Montreal into there. But then you go over to the East, and you got to remember New York Rangers, whether or not they can bounce back, they're going to be a wild card spot as well. And
Yeah, you got the Rangers, Islanders, Columbus kind of knocking on the door
you,
here.
yeah, I mean, they could be real terrible, or they could be real good. You just don't know from those groups. But I don't think they're going to take anyone's spot from that top three. I think it will be a wild card spot again. I just think I think Ottawa is stronger. Personally, I think you guys might have a different view, and that's fine. Florida, I think it's Florida. I'm not going to bet against them until they lose the cup. Until they get bounced out of the playoffs, I'm not betting against them.
I might bet
And
against them in the regular season, like hey, they get a wild card spot instead of a top three. But
and
once they
still win the cup.
make the playoffs, like yeah.
Yeah. And then Tampa Bay, like until Tampa Bay actually have a proper fall off, because I think we've been predicting Tampa Bay's fall off for the last 3 years, and it just hasn't happened. So, yeah, I think for me it's still a wild card spot. I don't think they're stealing anyone's top three spot this season. They will eventually, very very soon.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, not much more to add there. So if you got anything else, I think that's pretty much it for me. Strong team.
Yeah,
It's been building for a while, and it's finally coming to fruition. All right. Yeah,
positive signs ahead.
yeah, for a long time because they're all young. Don't forget to like, comment below, and subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll be covering all rest of the teams of the league for the preview for the 2025-2026 season. But till next time, we'll catch you guys.
Bye guys.